All right, we'll get going. Henry will probably come back on. So I want to welcome all of you to A Life of Public Speaking. And the reason why I call it The Life of Public Speaking is because your life is filled with public speaking opportunities. And we often place public speaking into the play of being up on a podium or being up on a stage or being in front of a large group. Okay, but public speaking is an everyday thing. And the title says all of that is A Life of Public Speaking. Because you'll realize as we go through a little bit of today's classwork that you'll recognize that, wow, there are a lot of times during the course of my day that I'm involved with some sort of public speaking. Or there are many instances in my life right now, in the past, or what could be in the future that revolves around speaking in public. And this becomes something very important to do and understand. Now, I had a couple did you guys get the email I sent today? Okay. The question on the email was to choose someone, a speech that inspires you and from a particular individual, and a line or a paragraph from that speech that impacts you. So I want to start off, and since we have a small group, this is really good because in a environment of really learning how to do this well, you're best in a small group. And as we go through this during the course of the year, we're going to be offering this as an ongoing type class where we can really dig in and truly make you not just a good speaker, a confident speaker, but a great speaker. And it's good that we have this small group now. And Henry, if you're listening, if you're there, pop open your camera so we can see you. If you're still there, your name's still up on the list there. Now, if George, if you want to go first, if you will take that selection that you've chosen, and I just want you to read it to me or speak it to me. And first tell me who you chose, why, and then speak to me a paragraph or a few sentences of their speech.
So I chose the Kevin Durant MVP speech when he won the MVP in 2013-2014 season. It's mostly known for him dedicating his the MVP award to his mom because of all the hardship they went through and family. So just sing the lines. So like the main line that he said is, "Mom made us believe you're the real MVP." That line really stuck to me because it shows how these athletes would basically show the media how their parents or brothers or anyone who has helped them through their journey to the league can make an impact.
So say that line one more time.
So mom made us believe you're the real MVP.
Mom made us believe you're the real MVP. Awesome. And who else did we have down there? Lexi, you're there? You want to turn your screen on there you go. Good to see you, Lexi. How are you?
Good.
Good. Do you have a speech of choice?
Yeah. I have Lady Gaga's Oscar speech
Okay.
years ago. A line that stuck out to me was, "It's not about winning. What it's about is not giving up. If you have a dream, fight for it."
Okay. Excellent. Great. And then for some reason I can't see your name down there, but you have the animal in the background, but I can't see your name down there.
I'm Lynn.
Oh, hi, Lynn. How are you?
Good.
Sorry, it didn't show your name on the bottom there. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
So give me what you chose and why.
So I chose a global warming speech because I feel very strongly about the topic, and I think that people should work harder to slow down the effects and yeah.
Okay, so you have a passion for the environment, which shows me by your beautiful picture in the background of your image there that goes along with your personal brand of what you believe in and what you represent. So can you read a line or a few lines from that speech for us?
Okay. So, but if we don't act and warming increases by 5 to 9 degrees by the end of the century, the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
Okay, excellent. So we're going to move to and we're going to go back to that as we go along. And I think I got everybody. Did I miss anybody here? Okay. So one of the first things that I want to get across, and I mentioned this in the email earlier today, the first and number one thing that you need to remember about public speaking before you do anything else is know who is your audience. That is the most important thing about public speaking. Okay, so now let's step back and let's look at how I'm dressed. All right, George, how am I dressed?
You're dressed. You're like dressed like appropriate to what we're in the Zoom, not like in your pajamas or.
Okay. All right, Lexi, what about you? What do you think? I mean, how am I dressed? What would be your impression? I'll show you if I can. How am I dressed? Oh, you're on mute, Lexi. That's okay.
You're dressed very professional, like you're speaking with a purpose.
Okay. Now, in my dress attire, if you see, I'm wearing a kind of like a t-shirt. All right. It's a sort of a button-up t-shirt. It's not a t-shirt with a message about my favorite musical band or something like that, or it's not just a sports t-shirt, but it's a casual t-shirt. Okay. Now, you may not thought of this, but I thought exactly about what I was going to wear to tonight's presentation. The reason being was that I did a check beforehand to see what was the age demographic of the people I was speaking to. Okay, and I saw, and I even asked, George, I got an email from, I believe it's your mom, okay, and I asked, how old is George? Okay, and I did that a few times today to find out, well, what's the general population of the age? And the general population of the age of people who responded was 14. Okay, so that in my head showed me now, okay, I'm going to wear something that's going to be a little more relaxing to a 13, 14, or 15-year-old or 12-year-old, somewhere in that demographic. I'm going to wear something that's more relatable to them versus me wearing a button-down shirt with a collar and maybe a tie or a jacket, which would that really make sense to the audience that I was speaking to? But if I was speaking to a group of 45 to 50-year-olds on a Zoom call today, I wouldn't wear a tie, and I probably wouldn't wear a button-up because that's really not my personal style. So I want to stay, I'm the audience as well, so I want to stay true to who I am at this point. But I would definitely have worn maybe a polo shirt with a collar versus just a t-shirt. So that's knowing my audience, okay? Now, audience, as you can see on the slide, your audience is going to have a couple different areas, and we're going to touch upon it more than just what's on the screen now. But age is very important, like I just spoke to all of you today. Education. Okay, the education level of the people you are speaking to becomes very, very important. Let's take this for instance. If I'm speaking to high school athletes and versus college athletes, and I'm speaking about eligibility requirements, If I'm speaking to the high school athletes, my conversation has to have more education versus explanation. So let's bring that back again. I have to educate that group that I'm speaking to about college eligibility or playing eligibility, because most of them probably with the education level don't really understand or know what eligibility is all about. So part of my audience conversation has to be education of exactly what eligibility means versus speaking to a college group that has probably already been educated on what eligibility means. So I can go into more of an explanation of how you keep your eligibility or how you don't lose your eligibility. But if I'm speaking to a high school group, I'm going to be more about the education side. So knowing your age, knowing your education. Male versus female. If you're giving a presentation about a subject matter, you want to know, okay, is this a 50-50? Is this a male-dominated group? Or is this a female-dominated group? So if you are female versus a male, and if I'm a male and predominantly I'm speaking to a group of females, then I have to understand and know as a speaker that I'm a guest in their world at that moment. And vice versa. If you're a female speaker and predominantly most of the people in the room are male, you have to realize that, hey, I'm a guest in their world for certain matters. So I have to have an understanding that you don't always know their perspective. And as a speaker, you want to be able to give them the information that you want to give them, but also let them understand that you're not trying to say, I understand, Lexi, what you're going through. Because you're a teenage girl and I'm a grown man, but I want to say I understand what you're going through. You might say to me, like, you might immediately disqualify me as a speaker because you might say to yourself, how do you know what I'm going through? You're an old man. I'm a young girl. How do you know? And immediately I may have good information to give you, but you may lose me right away. And as a speaker, it's very hard to get somebody back after you lose them or after they disqualify you or discredit you, not because the information you were giving across was wrong, was because you didn't pay attention to the audience that you were speaking to. So let's group together race and religion. Those are two very important areas when you're speaking to people, to realize sometimes that what you're talking about and think about how that might affect somebody based upon the race they are or the religion that they are. Now, we call this class a life of public speaking because public speaking is not just about, I'm going to keep repeating this a couple times, it's not just about you talking in front of a crowd or a group. Lynn, if you and I are having a conversation one-on-one, just me and you, that's public speaking. I still have to know your age, your education, male or female, your race, your religion. I still want to try to understand as a speaker, as a person, and understand who I'm speaking to. So that if I have a point that I want to get across, I'm making sure that, number one, you understand the point I'm trying to get across, but first, I understand you. And that's one of the key things about speaking, knowing your audience, knowing what they need, based upon as much information that you can possibly find about them. So let's say, for instance, you're presenting into a classroom, okay? And you're speaking in front of your particular class. Now, they're your peers, George. They're 13 years old. They're in 8th, 9th, something grade, somewhere around there. And you're getting up and you're talking to them. Now, you may know your peers and they're sitting in class. You may think to yourself, man, they don't want to hear me talk today. They're just waiting to get this class over with. And how am I going to go in there and get their attention? What do I need to do to grab their attention right now? My age group. So go ahead.
So I would try and maybe at the beginning have some humor to get them like more engaged into the conversation.
Very good. Now there's different ways that you can add humor. Now, humor you have to be careful about, okay? Because if you're not naturally funny when you're speaking in public, that could come off the wrong way. And I've seen that happen many times before because everybody always says, hey, if you can make people laugh, they'll listen. Well, if you're not funny, it may backfire on you. Now, what you could do, and this is something you may want to write down, and what works very good in a setting like you just mentioned, George, is what's called self-deprecation. You can make the laughter about you. And if there's a way that you can make the laughter a little bit about you, you can sometimes get their attention and it makes people, that was funny, but you're not a funny person. But they were laughing, you set it up, the joke's on me. But that's okay, because I got what I'm looking for. I got your attention. I also became relaxed because everybody's sort of laughing now. And at the same time, you humbled yourself in that situation. So Lynn, if you were up and you were talking about, you were discussing something along the lines of a better environment, and you had a bunch of information up there, but they were saying, who does this girl think she is? Coming up here, knowing all this information, who does she think she is? Now, you can start the conversation with something along the lines of, I know I might not be that big, but I might teach you something today. And that'll make people laugh. Like, that was good. That was funny. You can come up with something creative in that way to talk about sometimes what's called the obvious. You know, so Lynn, if you were presenting in front of a room of adults about what we need to do to help better the environment, you can point that out. Okay, I know I'm a lot younger than all of you here. And you make that a point. And that helps sort of what's called break the ice with the audience. So you have to do, there are a couple different areas that in knowing different types of audiences, we just did a couple like classrooms, and then we can take, for instance, a college coach versus a high school coach, and how you're presenting yourself and knowing what that audience is, that sets you up to how you may communicate with them. Because if you're communicating with a college coach, that's public speaking. Okay, that's something that I want all of you guys to realize, that public speaking is speaking to your coaches. Right? That's a big part of it. So if you're going and you're an athlete and you're looking to go to play sports in college, knowing how to speak to that college coach, what they're looking for from you, is a lot different from what that high school coach may be looking from you. Right? And understanding they're looking for maturity. They're looking for an understanding about the game you play. Because they already know whether or not you're a good athlete or not. Now they want to determine, hey, are they mentally prepared to handle what they have to handle at this university? Are they ready for this? And your one-on-one conversation with them can become very important to the way they see you, and then listen to what you have to say. So we also talk about the demographic. All right, your audience and the demographic becomes extremely important. So we're going to talk about, depending upon where you are in the country. Now, people might not think about this, but let's take a moment, and you can relay this to a big crowd, a small crowd, a group, or one-on-one conversation. Because remember, public speaking is to a big crowd, a small group, or one-on-one. All of it is still public speaking. So let's say you're speaking to a group in Alabama. Okay, so Lynn, you're talking to a group of people in the state of Alabama, which is all the way down south. Now, and you're speaking about the environment. Now, number one, you may want to realize that there are certain things, or let's say, let's hold that back from Alabama. Let's talk about, you were speaking in Florida, Lynn. And in the state of Florida, there are certain things about the environment that are more important to them than, let's say, somebody in Staten Island, New York City. Entirely different part of the country. It's still the United States, but it's an entirely different demographic. Now, the people in Florida, Lynn, are going to be very conscious of their water quality. Very important to them. The Everglades are very important to the people in Florida. And there are certain things that go on based upon the different sugar manufacturing companies that are in Florida that have been known to have excess runoff from their farms that go into the Okeechobee Lake that then flows down through the different rivers and goes into the Everglades, which then affects the animals that are the wildlife animals that live in the Everglades. Now you take that thought, and now New York City might have a whole different thought. Okay, now that's one thing. So in your speech, in your conversation, you're going to want to know that, hey, water quality is an important factor here that I want to speak about. But now that wasn't my main subject that I wanted to hit with the demographic. Your tone of voice when speaking to a group in Florida or Alabama, if you want to really speak well, is entirely different than if you're talking to a group in Staten Island, New York. If you're talking to that group in Alabama, you better not start talking like this real quick and fast. And okay, this is what I'm going to do. And we're going to come down there and we're going to do this. And I want to do this and I want to do that. That group in Alabama is going to say, whoa, slow down here, wild guy. All right. They'll say, hold up there, Yankee. Slow down. What? You have to know your demographic. So you might want to slow down a little bit and be conscious of that. And before you're starting that speech, knowing your demographic is that knowing that they might, in Alabama, you might more want to go in there and meet people beforehand. Slow it down a little bit. Shake someone's hand. Introduce yourself. Try to form a little bit of relationship. Versus your crowd in New York might be totally different. All right, when's the speech start? Okay, 5:30, ready, set, go. Give me your speech. All right, after that, you're done. Good. Now, because it's a whole different demographic of thought. So you want to be prepared for that. Okay, so knowing that demographic is extremely important. So age, education level, male, female, race, religion, and the demographic. Knowing those things are the first and foremost that you have to know before you're giving any sort of public speaking, one-on-one, small group, or a large audience. Find out as much as you possibly can about that demographic so you know exactly how to tailor the way that you are presenting yourself, what you're talking about, how you're delivering it, and what's important to them. Because at the end of the day, when you're speaking to somebody, it's less important. This is something you want to write down. It's less important what you have to say. It's more important what they're looking or need to hear. It's less important about what you want to say, but it's more important what somebody is looking or needs to hear. All right, so we have next up, we have presentation style. Now, the styles of presentations can vary a lot. Okay, you have an education-based presentation, and an education-based presentation is based on fact and evidence. Now, Lynn, somebody in your level of interest, okay, is very much going to carry the weight of education. So if you're speaking about something that you're interested in, which is the environment, you have to be factual and present evidence in what you're saying. If you're delivering a conversation, any kind of speech about the environment, you have to realize that that presentation style is going to be a lot about education. So you really have to deliver it with real facts and real evidence. It's not your opinion that's going to move somebody or convince them of why what you're talking about is important. What's going to move them and convince them is whether or not the facts are real and the evidence is convincing. You have to know whether or not you're on a podium or a stage. So a podium-based presentation requires pre-studying of your reading or your pre-written speech. Okay, if you've memorized your speech, you have to realize that when you're standing in front of the podium, you're stuck behind that podium. Okay, you don't want to be flailing your arms and moving. It looks funny and it distracts people. So you have to prepare yourself to be relaxed behind that podium. You can make little subtle moves. And these are all things that during the course of this year, we're going to have this class and we're going to bring you through these things so that you can really learn and perfect them, because we're in this right now, you're going to learn something, but it takes a while to perfect it. But I promise you, the one thing that you can get better at is speaking. And you can learn how to be a great speaker. Some things you can't learn how to do. The fact is that the world of athletics, you either have athletic talent or you don't. You can make yourself and work hard to be a good athlete. But it's very, 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 very minimal chance that you can make yourself into a great athlete. However, in public speaking, anyone that works hard at it and studies and learns it can make themselves from a bad or a good, and you can turn yourself into a great public speaker. So knowing things like how to control yourself at the podium, if it's a podium-based speech, is very important. It's also important to know that some speeches that you give in public, it's important to actually read the speech versus memorize it. Now you might ask, why? Certain speeches are meant to give based upon you reading through it. It means that you're trying to deliver a message of strong conviction in that there's no way I'd memorize this. Because putting this out from memory, I can't possibly convince you that you think I'm telling the truth in everything I'm saying. So reading it gives a higher level of conviction. And it keeps you sticking to the facts versus going off and using opinion. But reading from a podium from a pre-written speech requires you to, number one, have that speech fully rehearsed so that when you're reading it, you're not really reading it like you're reading for the first time, like you might have read your little short pieces today. You're reading it almost from memory because you've read it so many times and you basically have the thing from memory. You probably could do it from memory, but you're going to read it through. And the point of it is that you know what line's coming up next and how you're going to deliver that next line and how you're setting one line up for the next one to showcase something that's very important. So that's on the podium and on the stage. And we talked a little bit, George, about the classroom. Now, the classroom is a little bit different effect, okay, based upon where you stand. Okay, one important thing about the classroom is knowing, hey, is that door behind me? Is it open? Is it closed? Does it have a window? Are there windows around me? Are there any distractions? If there are any distractions, then you want to stand in front of those distractions because you don't want people to be looking at the distraction versus looking at you. When you're giving your presentation, it's all eyes on me, everybody. Because when someone's eyes are not on you, most likely they're not hearing you. They may be listening, but they're not hearing. So if there's a lot of windows in the classroom, you should probably go stand over by those windows. Because a lot of people will probably be looking in that direction out the window. So if you're standing at that window, they're looking at you. If there are no windows and there's a door with an open glass on the door, stand by that door. At least angle by that door. If the door is open, you may want to do the same thing. But at least butt a little bit off from the door so that you can see if someone comes around through the door. If someone's coming in late or someone's peeking in the door, you can see them beforehand. Another area is public speaking inside versus outside. Okay, so now if you're talking to somebody inside, your presentation is a lot different than what it is outside. Your voice, which we're going to talk about in one of the next slides, your voice has to be a lot different. Right, George? If you're giving a speech out on a basketball court or a baseball field and it's outside and there's 50 people around, it's a lot different tone than how you'd be speaking in a classroom. In a classroom, you would be more toned down. Now, if you're outside, you don't want to yell. You just want to speak, and this is also something that we would be going over in an ongoing class on this, is learning how to talk from what's called talking from your gut, from your stomach, versus talking from your vocal cords. You can only talk so loud from your vocal cords. Learning how to talk from your stomach, from down below, allows you to project yourself with a lot more volume than it would yelling from your throat. Yelling from your throat sounds like you're yelling. Talking from your stomach sounds powerful. And you may need that when you're outside to project your voice so that you're not screaming, you're just speaking loudly, which is very important so that everybody can hear you. You'll be surprised at how far you can carry your voice when you're using your gut, your stomach, versus your vocal cords. Now let's talk about if Lynn was sitting on a panel. Now let's picture Lynn, we're at Disney World. Okay, Lynn, we're at Disney World, all right? Actually, no, we're at SeaWorld. And there's a group gathered around, and there are 5 panelists. So panelists, Lynn, are when there's a couple people on stage at one time, and they're all sitting next to each other. Okay, all of you know about the environment. You all have a different reason for being up there together, and everybody's sitting in front of you. And there's somebody standing there asking all of you questions. Okay, that's a part of public speaking. That individual is going to ask each of you a different question about whales. Okay, each of you are going to have your own answer about whales. It's a different way of speaking versus speaking by yourself, because now you have 4 other people who are standing there. So you might be the first person, you might be the second, the third, the fourth, or the 5th person that's answering the question. And on a panel, one of the things that is very important to do is that you involve the other people who are on the panel. So if George is on the panel with you, you want to be able to turn and say, the question was, Lynn, how has the change in how has climate change affected the whale population? Just making that up. And now you know George is an expert on whale migration. You want to be able to turn and say, Stephen, that's a very good question. And I know George has spoken often about how the change in climate has altered the migration of whales from the north to the south. And I've always been very impressed with George, with the amount of information George has been able to acquire over these years. But my thoughts on this are that, and you go on with your thoughts. It's different than if it was just you up there by yourself. It becomes very impactful when you include somebody else on the panel in your answer to what you're talking about. So then it may become what's called a dialogue. George, it becomes more that you and Lynn start talking to each other. And the audience, remember your audience. Who's your audience? The audience is there listening because they're there to learn from all of you panelists who are supposed to be specialists. You're supposed to be the best at knowing about this subject matter. And they want to hear the two of you go back and forth. That's how they're learning. And it also shows that you're humble to say, hey, I respect the person sitting next to me, George, because he's as qualified. And then when you're talking, they're going to be a lot more likely to listen to you because now you get to the fact of that people listen to people they like. And so how do you get someone to like you up on stage when they don't really know you and there's a lot of other people there? Be someone that shows that you're respectful to the other people who are up there, which the people that are listening are more likely to start respecting you. And then when you talk, they'll not just listen, they'll hear you. So then you have different styles of the presentation, like a keynote or a motivational speech. A keynote speech is something where you're the main attraction. So everybody's coming to listen to you, Lynn. Okay? You know that everybody's thinking about you and listening to you. That keynote speech, you have the ability to figure out what you want to talk about. It's wide open because everybody's there coming to listen to you. Okay? Now, a motivational speech is a different kind of speech. A motivational speech is, even Lynn, if you're talking about the environment, you can give a motivational speech. So now it's not so much about education. You may want to put a little piece of education about facts and about conviction, but you also want to be energetic and you want to be uplifting to get people to say, hey, I want to support what Lynn's doing. I think what she's doing is so great. I really want to be a part of what her mission is. Because you gave them a little bit of facts, but you also smiled, you made them laugh, you got them energized, and you also made them feel like, hey, I have to do something about this problem. I need to rally around this girl, Lynn. She's so amazing. That's a motivational speech. And then there's informational. Okay, so you have your different styles of presentation. Education, podium-based, being on the stage, being in the classroom, being in public, whether you're inside or outside, knowing what to do when you're on a panel, having a presentation. We didn't touch a lot upon that, but a presentation is when you're up there and you have a PowerPoint behind you and you're going down the line. Okay, very important about the presentation. Number one, and this is something that we go over in these classes that we would work on consistently, is knowing where to stand, knowing when to select the button and move on, and when not to. Making sure that you don't move ahead until you're done with the subject that you're talking about, because you don't want people reading ahead of you. Knowing what to put in your slides. And the number one thing about slide presentations, if you guys can walk away from this right now being young and that you probably have to do PowerPoint presentations, never, please, never read just straight from the PowerPoint presentation. That puts all of your public speaking to shame. Never do that. You use the presentation as a model for you. You have to know your material. Because if someone does that and I look at that and say, what do I need you for? I can read that. I didn't need you to read for me. That's kind of insulting. What, you don't think I can read? Knowing your audience. What's your audience going to think if you're putting a PowerPoint present or a keynote presentation up there and you're reading word for word? What do you think they're thinking? I think he thinks I can't read. So George is going to read it for me. Who does he think he is? Reading it for me? Just give me the presentation, George, I'll read it. Right now, what happens there, George? You lost them, right? You lost them on the trust factor. But you got a really good presentation. You worked really hard at it. You've got great information in there. You broke down the entire history of the NBA and where it's gone from 1940s to 2020. And in there, you analyze all the salaries, that how people didn't get paid all the way through with the percentages according to the cost of living and how much that basketball players make more than the common person and all this great information. But you started reading it word for word from your presentation and you just lost everybody. But you had such great information. Never, ever, ever do a PowerPoint or keynote presentation, and keynote meaning the Apple version. Never do any of those presentations on screen and read it word for word. That is something you definitely don't want to do. Now, as we move forward, the next most important part about a presentation, speaking, is the control of your voice. And you can have a lot of good information to give. But if you don't know how to properly control your voice, you could, number one, lose your audience. You can put them to sleep, or you can scare them away. Neither of those are things that you want to do. And how does that happen? It's normal for any of us. A monotone voice, after a while, the rhythmic motion in your brain only pays attention to like music. A voice is much like music. It's the same thing. So if you have problems falling asleep at night, it's been proved that there are radios, or now there are apps that play wave music for you, or plays rain. Why do you think rain helps you fall asleep? It's relaxing, yes. It's consistent. The consistency puts your brain in a systematic pattern. And that systematic pattern can lead you to being complacent, relaxed, unfocused. But when I go like that, you suddenly become refocused again. Because you went from a monotone to a point of excitement. Now, voice control becomes very important in what you do. And voice fluctuation is the first piece we'll touch upon. And if you realize, I did just that when we went from one slide to the next. As I started talking about voice, if you realized, I changed my whole tone. And you know what Lynn did? Did you watch Lynn, George? Did you see what she did?
Well, when you did when you're going at one tone during the voice control, and then when you got excited, I kind of jumped a little bit. I didn't see.
Yeah, you definitely jumped there. But if you saw what Lynn did and you made your own movements, it's just different. I'll show you what you did. When I came from this slide, presentation style, red, right? And I came over to here, purple, soothing. I changed my voice tone. Do you know what Lynn did? She did exactly that. And you know what you did, George? You leaned back. You relaxed. You changed your entire body position, all because of two things. I used the power of color and I used my voice to control your emotion. Now, if I was up on stage, I'd be able to use the I would use 3 levels of power with that. Okay, if I was up on stage, I would use a purplish tone, whether it's in the presentation, or if I was in a big presentation, I had full control, I would use it in lighting. I would have the lighting being changed by whoever was helping me out with sound and lighting. I would have the lighting in the room change, but it would change gradually. From this screen, it would start to change on the light in the room while I'm still on this screen here. And then this screen would come in and they'd all come together, and so would my voice. Because now I'm bringing you into a different mood for a purpose. Because I want to bring you out of the zone of, we were just talking about presentation and style and being there and present. I want to talk to you more about your ability to control based upon how your voice, number one, goes up and down. See what I just did there? What did I just do? Lynn, did you hear what I did? What did I just do with my voice?
So when you said up, your voice went louder, and then when you said down, your voice kind of yeah.
Absolutely. Up and down. Your voice should carry with the words that you're using. And this is why we talked about being on the podium. You're not reading it as if you don't know it. You have to know that speech, because your voice fluctuation, you already have to know where you're going to go high and where you're going to go low, where you're going to, all the different levels of voices. You have to know exactly when you're going to do that, and you set that up. Now, you might be thinking that you have to do this with a big stage, or you have to do this in front of a big crowd. You don't. I'm doing it in front of you guys. You can do it one-on-one with someone. We'll talk a little bit about the physical side as well in the next slide. But you can do it just one-on-one with a teacher. You can do it one-on-one with a friend. You can do it one-on-one with your mom or dad. You're trying to convince them on something, that's public speaking too. You want to talk to your mom and dad, there's different ways of doing it, isn't it? George, I don't think if you want something from your mom, hey mom, hey George, you can calm your tone down, son. Right? Fluctuation, volume. Right? You want to speak to your parent, there's a certain way of doing that, especially if you need something. I'm a parent too. You better come at me the right way if you're looking for something. Your voice better be in a certain tone. Hey, so, Mom, I was wondering if, I've really missed some of my friends during this break from school and the quarantine. I was wondering, like, maybe in like August, if this is all done, if maybe I can have a bunch of them over for like a big sleepover, like maybe 4 or 5 of them come by. Okay, yeah, sure, George, no problem. Versus, Mom, this whole thing stinks. And, I hope you're going to let me have a bunch of friends over in August. Different tone of voice, right? But you asked the same question, but you had a whole different tone. So, public speaking, home, large crowds, small groups, one-on-one, very important about how your tone goes up and down and the volume you have. Now, there's also levels of conviction, convincing them that you know your material and that you are of value. So when you're speaking to somebody one-on-one, small group or large, the way that you control your voice also helps convincing them that what you know is true and that you do know something and that what you're saying has value. People think that if you're shouting something, that's going to convince them. That's not always true. Some of the scariest moments are when someone's talking very softly and slowly to you about something that's very serious. Now, I'm about to tell you something that you may not want to hear. Later on today, I want you to realize, I just made you guys think, didn't I? All right, so from that, I didn't have to yell. But Lynn, your eyes came right up. You were wondering what's going to happen later on today. But I didn't have to yell and scream. But there is a level of conviction that, wait a minute, what does he know? What's going to happen? Now, you also want to be able to talk with a level of comfort. Okay, especially during today. One of the things that, Lynn, you might not, you've heard much about it, maybe, I'm not sure. But George, I'm sure you've talked about it, whether in your class or at home, like during our current pandemic situation, about how some of our politicians have reacted about what's going on. And that how some of them may not have acted or spoken in ways that made people feel comfortable. And sometimes it has nothing to do with the information they have or what they're saying. It's how they're saying. And you can deliver a message to somebody using the same words. And it may cause someone fear and it may cause someone comfort. But knowing how to make somebody feel comfortable is understanding and speaking with a level of empathy, that you know what they're going through, and to convince them that you do know what they're going through. Because you've gone back to the most important thing about public speaking. Who is your audience? What do you know about them? Is it the American public? Are they scared? Are they worried? Do they not know what's happening and going on? It's a level of comfort there. And then you have your class of motivational speaking. Motivational speaking is appealing to people's emotions. So Lynn, we talked a little bit about that before, okay? Motivational speaking, and if you're speaking about something revolving around the environment, you may want to show them a video of what them not caring about the environment is going to look like later. Or how when people don't, when there's an abundant amount of plastic in the ocean, you may want to show them, unfortunate as it is, you may want to show them what it does to animals and how it affects them. And then how much you're energized and how much you not just so know about it, but how emotionally tied you are to that and how that makes you feel. And showing them that look at these animals, look what's been happening to them. And over the course of time, if we don't stop this, this is what's going to happen. So we have a voice. We have to stand up because they don't have a voice. They can't speak. So we have to speak for them, Lynn. We have to be for them. So let's gather around. Look around you. Look how many people are in this room. We can all affect change on these animals today. Right? See, now that's motivation. Or at least that's the sequence of motivating. Because the first thing I did, what was the first thing I did, George, in that?
First thing you did is start at like a soft tone, and then you went higher.
All right, I used my volume. What else did I do when I talked about what Lynn should do?
You talked about, you went from what Lynn can do to the like facts, sort of.
I talked about the video. So with that video, when I spoke about her showing a video of the animals, I painted a picture in your head. That was my whole point. I wanted to paint a picture in your head. Is anybody listening would have painted a picture in their head of animals trapped in plastic, however that appeared to you. But I got you into the emotional state that I wanted you to be in so that I can motivate you. And then when I said, turn and look, you guys didn't have to do it, there's no one there. But that motion, hey, look at all the people around you. What does that show? Community. I motivated you that there's a community around you. So if you don't do this, you're the person standing out in the crowd that's not doing this. Because look at all the people around you who are. And we can all do this together. You're not doing this alone. Because not many people want to do things alone. Now, one of the things that you have to realize about motivational is that motivational is kind of like athletics in a lot of ways. There's certain things you have, and there's certain things you don't. It's kind of like trying to be funny. If you're not funny, don't try to be funny. If you're not a motivating person, don't try to be motivating. But if you are, then you can work on that. But it's very hard to try to convince people that you're motivating them. You have to figure out another way to do it. Maybe it's not you personally. Maybe you're delivering the facts and you choose a video that motivates them. Because it's not really your personality to be highly motivational. Let's hit to the last slide here. Physical energy. And this is an area that we would spend a good amount of time, and it's a very advanced level of public speaking. Okay? The first point is what everybody has to be able to do. Public speaking, one person, group, small group, or large audience. And that's eye contact. You have to be able to be confident enough in what you're doing to make eye contact. Anytime you look away from somebody, the first thing it tells somebody is what? George, you look away from somebody, it's an old police way of determining if someone's what?
Their eye?
They're lying.
Lying.
Okay? It's a key way that police learn if someone's lying or not. Okay? You can be talking, and they teach you this at police academy and beyond that. And when someone's talking, someone naturally, when they're not telling the truth, unless they're really, really good at what they're doing, naturally your eyes twitch and go a different direction. So with that little piece of fact, Not that someone on stage is going to see you, but if you're not making eye contact with somebody, especially one-on-one in small group, if you're not making eye contact, it's very hard to be invested in what you're saying. Because the person's emotion is saying, hey, I'm not really feeling their physical energy right now. Are they with me on this? Are they into this? Especially one-on-one. If you're talking to a high school coach, George, and you're meeting them for the first time, and you go up and shake that hand, first step public speaking, okay, knowing your audience, hey, what kind of coach is he? Yeah, that's the kind of coach. You better shake their hand and look them in the eye. You better know that's an important factor, because if you don't do that one simple thing, done, over, no matter what you say from there on out. Okay? So knowing how to look someone in the eye is the first step in physical energy-based communication in public speaking. Body language, whether you're sitting or standing. Okay, both are very different. Nobody wants to see somebody stand this, unless you have a podium, stand in the same spot and not move. People look at you like, there's something wrong with them? Why aren't they moving? Arms down here, just standing, talking. Okay, not very convincing. So if you're standing, you want to have some kind of a movement. Now, you don't want to pace back and forth. That drives people nuts. And it's like watching a tennis match, right? Your eyes just keep going back and forth, back and forth. But you don't want to do that to people. They'll lose you. But what you want to do is you want to move, stop, make your point. These are things that we would work on extensively in person going through a course like this. You move to make a point, you stop. You make eye contact, you hit your point, you move to your next point, and you move your body at the same time. If you're interrupted in that, you stop right in the middle of your point, you make a strong point. Slow your voice down, maybe even drop your head and move the other direction. You get to your next point you're going to make, you stop there. If you're standing and you have some sort of a spot to move in, you always want to start moving a little bit in those points. Now, the next couple pieces are hard to do. And I don't recommend it right off the bat, but it's something we would work on as well. Physical contact and emotional peer-to-peer energy, okay? Now, the physical contact is hard. You have to really know your audience, really know your audience. But what it does is that when you have groups of people don't, if there's a crowd that you're talking to, and a crowd could be 10 people, they're actually drawing energy from themselves and not you. And if you can you learn how to use another person to take your energy and transfer it into others. For instance, you have a crowd and you're talking to them. If you're good enough and controlled enough, you can walk up to somebody, point them out. Number one, know your audience. Make sure that individual, you've already watched that person. You know that if you point them out, they're not going to feel embarrassed, ashamed, whatever it might be. You have to watch for that. That's why I say this is a little accelerated. You look for that, watch for that, find that person. You can walk up and make your point, and your hand can be on their shoulder. And you've now reached out and you've made your point as you're touching that person. Now, as you're making this point that's directly at them, the passion and energy they're getting from you making that point is transferable to the person next to them. They feel your touch like the person you're touching. Now, you can also use that point if you are talking about something of emotion. Lynn, if in your conversation about the environment is making somebody upset, in your speaking, you can find that individual and you can comfort them. You comforting that person, making them feel better, that I feel you, I understand, again transfers over to other people. And they get that same emotional feel from the person sitting next to them, not from you, from the person sitting next to them. But you have to look at also non-contact emotional pull. And that's watching the body language of the audience and seeing who is feeling an emotional charge from your presentation or your speech. You want to key in on them, draw from their emotion, and bring their emotion to a climax, which becomes contagious with others. And this is something that some of the greatest emotional, motivational type speakers are able to do in their presentations, or some of the best coaches, or some of the best captains on a team. As a captain on a team, you can see that somebody is emotionally either down because they just made a mistake on the basketball court, George. It's the fourth quarter. There's 2 minutes to go. They came down the court. They dribbled off their toe, and the ball went out to the side. And because of that, the other team got the ball back. They came down. They scored 2. Now they're up by 2. It was tied. Your coach calls a timeout. That guy walks over. Your teammate walks over. He is distraught. And you're the captain, and there's 2 minutes left, and you're giving your 2-minute speech about how we're going to pull this together. We got this. We've got the ball back right now. This is exactly what we're going to do. And you see that emotion that teammate's having, you lift that emotion up, and you let them know, Jimmy, it's okay. We got you. Pick your head up. Any of us could have made that mistake right now. But now, forget that. That's over with. Because we have the ball, Jimmy. And you don't worry about this. So now you're keying in on that emotion, and you're bringing that emotional to a climax, which is contagious to the rest of the team. Because the rest of the team's going to say, yeah, Jimmy, don't worry about it. Come on, and look what you just did. You just unified all of them. Now everybody's coming out saying, let's go. That's public speaking, using peer-to-peer energy. So those are all very important areas of public speaking. That the physical side of it becomes very important for you to carry your message. Because the one thing that I want to get across to you guys is that speaking, and again, and I know I've said this a couple times already, and I've done it for a reason. Whether you're speaking to one person, a small group, or a big audience, speaking is about emotion. A great speaker carries the emotion of not themselves, but the room they're in. They hold the whole emotion of the room. They own the emotion. But sometimes in speaking, you have to figure it out as you go. And that's why you have to be very aware of the audience you're speaking to and the surroundings that you have. Because you might have a plan within your speech. But humans are humans. And you really don't know how they're going to react. Because things change all the time. And you have to be able to speak with that change. Speaking is an emotional movement of words from you to another person. And public speaking is not just about speaking to crowds. Public speaking is about speaking to one person, 5 people, 20 people, or 500 people. If you guys start thinking about how to be a better public speaker, I promise you, it will increase your opportunity to success more than anything else you do. And I will hold that tight to what anybody says. If you learn how to be a great public speaker, you can increase what you're able to accomplish more than anything else you do. Because the rest of the stuff can come along the way. But your mastering of public speaking in all different levels can open doors for you that you never thought that you can open, because you can speak and you understand speaking and you understand people. And when you find an understanding for people, you know how to talk to them. So now what I want you guys to do, the two of you, is because I think we lost one of that. So what I want the two of you to do is I want you to take what you read before. I want you to take a couple seconds, not going to give you a lot. I want you to take what you read before, and I want you to reread it to me after 1 hour and 10 minutes of going through this exercise. I'll let you have a couple seconds, and then George, you'll go first.
Can I begin?
Go ahead, knock it out.
Mom made us believe you're the real MVP.
Good. Now, I'll tell you what. When you said Mom, the way you said it that time gave me the little, when your hair stands up in the back of your neck, a little bit of the shivers, you gave me that. Because the way you said Mom that time made me think about my mom. And everybody has a mom. So one thing we all have in common, right? We all have a mom. So that's very powerful. And what you did a little different there was you had a voice pause. You said, Mom, Mom. And when you did that, you gave people the chance to think about their own mom when you said Mom. You didn't just blow through it. Mom, you're the real MVP. And when you did that pause, that was powerful. And then at the end, you gave you kind of came off a little bit. You're the real MVP. Not, you're the real MVP. No, all right? Emotion. You're the real MVP. And in the body too. So good job there. Lynn, say your part again.
Okay. But if we don't act and warming increases by 5 to 9 degrees by the end of the century, the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
Okay, now much better, Lynn. So much better. Okay, what I want you to do this time is I want you to same thing. But now when you said 5% and 90? What were the two numbers there?
5 to 9.
5 to 9. I want you to say 5 to 9%. Because remember, fact and conviction, when you're talking about something like the environment, fact and conviction, the fact of the matter is 5 to 9, and drag out the 9 a little bit. Try that.
But if we don't act and warming increases by 5 to 9 degrees by the end of the century, the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
Good. So the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible. So try that part. At the end, so say 5 to 9%. And then go on and say, it'll be catastrophic and irreversible.
5 to 9 degrees. The damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
Okay, from 5 to 9 degrees will be catastrophic and irreversible. Now, see what I did? Catastrophic, pause, and irreversible. Try that.
5 to 9 degrees. The damage will be
Catastrophic.
catastrophic and irreversible.
Okay, the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible. Say that one line. The damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
The damage will be catastrophic and irreversible.
Good. All right, so just take for right there, like your opening, Lynn, when you say that opening, because of your voice is young, you make someone say, whoa, what did she say? All right, so that's very important for you. And then when you say 5 to 9 degrees, the damage will be catastrophic and irreversible. So that pause between catastrophic, because catastrophic is big, it's huge, right? So you want to say, make someone think, oh my gosh, catastrophic, like that's like, or tornado, catastrophic, like, oh my, you have to let it go into people's head, like, what does that mean? Catastrophic, irreversible, and irreversible. Oh my gosh, you mean it can't change? You mean it won't go back? Now you're convincing them, wow, this is a problem. The 5 to 9 degrees might get somebody, but catastrophic and irreversible? Whew, now you got me. Where do I send the money? Okay? All right, do any of you guys have any questions about anything we went over? All right, so on the bottom here, I sent an email out, so you guys have my email. On the bottom here is my social media. If you have any questions and you want to ask any questions, feel free to email me about those questions you might have, okay? Public speaking takes time, guys. But I promise you, if you use a couple things that you learned from today, something you wrote down, you don't have to do everything, okay? You don't have to do everything for this. It's just that you want to take one little thing that you learned from today, whether it was voice, or whether it was body language, whether it was eye contact, or whether it was the way you stand and walk, whether it was learning your audience and studying it and understanding it, whatever really touched you today, take some time to work on that over the next couple days and weeks with everybody you talk to. Make it something that you think about all the time. Okay, whether it's your brothers, your parents, your friends, even if it's just online doing something. Try to do that over the next couple days and weeks. I promise you, you'll start to improve. Right? And then we'll have these on a regular basis where we can really dig in and work, because I promise you can become, if you're a bad public speaker, you can become good. And then when you're good, you can become great. That is one thing I can promise you can do. All right, there's no questions. Thanks, guys. I hope you learned a little something today.
Thank you.